Okay, so welcome to your first workshop at the 2020 Teaching History and Social Sciences in the Time of COVID-19 conference. To get us started in a good way, I want to acknowledge the land on which I'm coming from today as the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. I'm grateful that we are able to come together today to learn, share, and support each other. Jason, I don't know if you want to go to the next slide, Jason. Jason Hatch teaches law at Strathroy District Collegiate Institute with the TV DSB. He's also the co-chair of the London OGEN Committee. We're all looking forward to participating in this workshop titled, You're Not Doing an Exam, as we are suddenly asking ourselves this question in light of our ever-changing lives as educators. I'm your host for this workshop. My name is Sarah, and I'm on the executive of OHASTA. Before I turn it over to Jason, I just want to let you know about a few features of Zoom. I don't know if you just want to go to the next slide. I think everybody here is muted, but if you don't mind muting yourself, unless you're going to ask a question or say anything, just to eliminate any background noise. There is a chat feature, so please post comments, questions, or any resources in the chat area. Jason and I will be monitoring the chat and then bring to light any of those things that come up. The session is being recorded, so you can choose to have your camera on or off as it's your personal choice. On behalf of OHASTA, I want to thank you for attending this year's conference, and I want to thank Jason ahead of time for providing us with such an amazing and relevant topic today. Over to you, Jason.
Thanks very much, Sarah. Can everybody hear me? Okay, good. So like Sarah said, if you have questions, you can pop them in the chat. We're also a small group today, so feel free to interrupt me, throw your mic on and just ask your question, because that's going to be the best way to learn. And as Sarah said, I mean, this is something that we are having to adapt to right now because the ministry is saying we don't have to do exams. And so some of our boards, including mine in Thames Valley, they've said that we're not doing exams. And so how do we kind of create something that can summarize our entire course and build on our students' learning? And that's really what we're going to be looking at today. So the idea is that you will be able to get something out of this that you could hopefully even take into your class at the end of the quad. If you're doing quadmesters, our quad is ending in 2 or 3 weeks. So maybe this is something that you can take in right away and give your students the opportunity to put their learning into action. Because for me, that's what experiential learning is all about. It's taking our learning and putting it into action. So just a brief overview of what we're going to do in the session. Hopefully I'm just about 15 or 20 minutes, the less of me, the better. And this will give us lots of time we can work with the group. Because we're a smaller group, rather than do the 4 breakout rooms, I think we'll kind of stay in this one and we can collaborate with one another to create some sort of final evaluation that we can do in an experiential lens. We're going to talk about some of the questions you may have, some of the things you may run into, but the biggest thing is don't hesitate to ask questions because that's why we're here. So as an introduction, the big question is, what are we doing and why? And the big concept that we want to take a look at is we want to create evaluations that really mirror the skills and the abilities that our students are going to use in their professional practice. We really need to refocus our ideas to take a look at what are we assessing and why are we assessing it? What is assessment and evaluation really all about in the CWS classroom? So our history, our social sciences classrooms, our law, our politics, our civics classrooms. What are we really doing with assessment and why are we evaluating what we are? The goal of school is to prepare students for that next step, and we have to really reevaluate what we are doing in our evaluations to ensure that students are prepared for that next step. We want to prepare them for the real world, so let's actually prepare them for it. The quote here, I'll let you guys read that, but this comes from one of the students who participated in our experiential learning final evaluation last January. So January 2020. And the key idea that I really like taking away from it, that they found that they were actually applying their learning. They weren't just telling me something. They weren't just memorizing something. They were actually learning something and applying it and showing me how it worked in the real world. And so as part of our evaluation and as part of the experiential learning process, a big piece was reflection at the end of it. So I had the students actually tell me what they think they learned and what they, how they felt about it, and if they found it a valuable experience. And this was one of the things that really stuck out with me as proof positive that this was a good experience. So before we really get into what we did, we have to take a look at what experiential learning actually is. And this is a nice overview of what experiential learning is all about. And it comes from Carleton University. On the left-hand side, what I really want to highlight is that it's the application of theory to real-world experiences. And like I just said, I mean, if we're looking to really prepare our students for that next step, whether it be the world of work or if it's post-secondary, we want to make sure that we're giving them the tools that they need to succeed. When we give our students real world experiences, this isn't something that's just beneficial to our Canadian and World Studies classrooms. This is something that they can take to every single class and every single course that they're going to do throughout high school and at post-secondary. And on the right, what you're going to see are some key benefits that are highlighted by Carleton University and the key benefits of the experiential learning and what they bring to our students. Ultimately, we're here to serve our students, and ultimately, we're here to provide them with a really positive experience in their learning. And so the idea that it makes student learning relatable, it increases the effectiveness, it links the theory to the practice. And I think that's sometimes where we get lost, is that we're really smart people, but we don't necessarily show how we can take that intelligence and apply it to the real world. And we want to make sure that the students understand how we can actually take theory and put it into practice. And the last one is important because we want to develop lifelong learners. And so if we can show students how we're making these connections, they're more likely to engage later on. And yeah, so this is an image from our final exam that we did last January. And this is what I always tell my students. I want to see them I want to see that they can actually do something. We have lots of students who can memorize things really, really well, but applying the knowledge is something else. The ability to actually do something the way you would do it in your adult life and your professional career is very, very different than actually saying you could do something. I could probably tell you how to change the oil on your car, but I wouldn't do it. I don't have that skill set. So even though I can tell you the theoretical element of it, the actual application, which is the most important part of changing the oil, is something that I can't do. So we really need to focus on the fact that we want our students to do, not just tell us that they can do something. So the project concept. We're going to take a quick look at where this project came from and some of the results that we had from it. So the first thing is understanding why we decided to go with an experiential final evaluation. I keep using the word final evaluation because it's not necessarily an exam in the traditional sense. And so I find the terminology was really important as well because it helped to alleviate student anxiety, which is the second point there. So over the last 2 years, I've really started to think about my assessment and evaluation practices and looking at why do I do the things that I do, and are these things actually relevant to my kids, and are these things relevant to where they want to be? I'm not necessarily looking to create a class of 24 or 30 lawyers in my 3M law class, but what I am looking to do is get students interested in the material and get them to develop their skills and get them to develop the ability to do something rather than just say something. And I came to the realization that I'm just really not a fan of tests. To me, what the test does, it tells you what the student can do under pressure, under what I think is important, what you can get on paper under a set period of time. That doesn't really mirror our real world experiences. It doesn't really tell me how much they actually know the material and how much they know the content. And I started to ask myself, are my exams and assessments actually preparing students for their next step? And I found that no, I thought my tests were great, but they weren't really important in the grand scheme of things in trying to prepare my kids for that next step. And over the last few years, I've started working with our leads and our teachers in our experiential learning department with the board. We've led PD seminars on doing mock trials in the classroom as a term assignment and other student-based projects. And so I've started to create a relationship with them. And it's to the point where they learn more about me and my program, and they've helped to generate ideas on how to actually move forward with these rich tasks for students that we're actually going to be successful with. Um, and the biggest one was the last one. A few years, so what I do is every year I bring in a local lawyer and he acts as our judge. So Rob Dack is a lawyer here in Strathroy, and he has judged, at last count, about 26 or 27 of our mock trials. And early in our relationship, Rob asked me why I have an exam. And I didn't have a good answer. I couldn't tell him, well, this is why I have the exam and this is what we're doing and here's what we're trying to get out of it. I didn't have a great answer for Rob. He 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 told me that he, as a lawyer, he hasn't taken an exam since the mid 1980s. And even then, it was open book, and he had the opportunity to study, and he knew exactly what was going to go on there. And so that really helped to give me that bit of a kick to reevaluate what I was doing. That if he's a lawyer, and I have some of these kids who want to be a lawyer, and I'm teaching the kids some of the skills they need to be a lawyer, why am I doing things that aren't really going to help them to be a lawyer? So Rob was really, really instrumental in starting my thinking on that one. So finally, what did we actually do? Rather than a traditional exam, we went to the Elgin County Courthouse in St. Thomas, and we did a mock trial. So we had students prepare the Crown case and the defense case. And we built on what we did during the term. So the exam was part of our course culminating 30%, which obviously some boards don't have right now. The other part is where they solve a historic cold case murder from the Great Canadian Mysteries website. But even though we're in Strathroy, we're 20 minutes west of London. The London courthouse was actually all booked up. So we did go to Elgin County in St. Thomas, which is about 20 minutes south of London. Students were broken into 2 trials and 2 sides for each trial. Again, this was a familiar scenario to them because we'd done it in the term, and they worked together to create their case. For the final evaluation, they did not get lawyer support. During the term, I bring in lawyers to work with the kids for 4 or 5 periods, and they were able to get one-on-one instruction on how to create a trial, how to create a line of questioning, how to develop their witnesses. They didn't have it this time, so they were able to show me what they actually learned. Our local lawyer who had judged our mock trials, he came back with us, and so he sat at the bench and he acted as our judge. The students were very familiar with him and they were very comfortable with him. So that helped to create that strong sense of bond between our students and the members of our community. We also bring in our local police force. So Constable Mark Thus is our community resource officer for Strathroy. And Constable Thus comes into the school, he does presentations, he does work with us during our regular mock trial session as a witness. And so he acted as a witness as well. And then we also had our school principal act as another police witness, again, to try to create that bond and to try to create those positive relationships between different levels of authority. So the preparation, as I said, the students knew how to conduct a trial because we had done it during the term. And during our in-class trials, for that group, for the January 2020 exam group, we did 6 lawyers and law students coming from Western University to work with our students. The great thing is I just cold called all these lawyers and they all say yes. Lawyers are generally a really sharing group, and they're a group who want to give back to the community. So don't ever be afraid to call on them to bring them in, and they're absolutely fantastic. We had 3 evaluation. The final evaluation mock trials were done without the professional assistants, as I said, and I gave them 3 days of prep, which is the exact same amount that I would give them for an exam. So it's no more and no less of a time commitment. So that's a nice piece of that. You still have the days that you want, but you're just looking at a different skill set and doing a different task. So the resources, this is the big one. Going out of building, there were a particular set of challenges, and we had to involve a whole bunch of different groups in order to help make this happen. So the Experiential Learning Department at our board level, they helped provide the money in order to get to St. Thomas. Living in Strathroy and teaching in Strathroy, no matter where we're going, it's about $400 to $450 to leave the building just for a bus to go anywhere. And so they were really good in helping to get that funding. Now, obviously, if you're staying in building, you don't have the costs. If you're in an urban area and you're able to walk or you're able to take public transportation, again, there's significantly less cost there. Our costs are high, like I said, just because we're a county and a rural school. Our administration was really, really supportive. Um, Obviously, they have to give permission to go on a field trip for the exam period. That was no issue at all. Really supportive because of the initiative that we were taking. At the community level, we had to book a courtroom, and like I said, we weren't able to get into London because they had too many cases going on. But the Elgin County Courthouse did have space, and it was a really easy process. I simply called their courtroom booking coordinator, and within a few hours, we had a courtroom for the day. So it was, again, a really positive experience. And then you can reach out to a local lawyer or a local judge if you do have that access, and that just helps to lend a little bit of credibility to the proceedings, and it really makes the students try a lot harder. Now, obviously, these types of things aren't necessarily available because of COVID restrictions right now, but they're just things to think about. And we're going to talk a little bit more about different types of spaces that you could use later on. And then finally, for the case material, it was already created for us. OGEN and the Ontario Bar Association run the OOCMT, the mock trial competition for students in Ontario. And so we just simply used one of the two of the cases that they had produced in the past. So again, no very limited preparation on the part of the teacher. So much of this material is already out there for us. And then this is what our exam actually looked like. So this slide and the next are going to show you what our final evaluation exam was. You see collaboration between students. As you can see in the large picture there, we actually have a student smiling during an exam, which isn't always something that you necessarily think of, but the students reported significantly less stress and anxiety all throughout the exam period. We see collaboration. Students had prepared their cases, but when they heard the other side argue their case, you see adjustments being made and you see collaboration happening in real time, which is what we want. We want these students to develop these skills and this level of comfort to work together successfully. They maneuvered their cases, they altered their cases. So in one case, I think it was the Crown, had started to bring up other arguments after they heard what the defense had said in questioning their witnesses. So we see that ability to pivot and maneuver, which oftentimes we want students to be able to do, but sometimes they may not be able to do. And again, just some other pictures from the exam. This was the Elgin County Courthouse. As you can see in the lower right-hand corner, that's Constable Mark Thus. He's our school resource officer. And he was there, he was on the stand, and he also helped to work with other witnesses to help prepare them. What is it going to be like on the stand? What does it feel like? And so he was able to give that real world experience to our students. So these, again, are just some examples of what our exam physically looked like. Now, we're not going to listen to the cases right now, but I had a communications technology student come with us. He took our pictures, he took some video, he also recorded all the cases. If you want to hear the cases, if you want to hear basically what the students produced and what their exam was all about, the slide decks will be sent out after the presentation. So feel free to listen to some, all, both cases, whatever you want. But you can actually hear our exam and you can hear what the kids did. And for me, I was really, really impressed with their level of professionalism and how they did everything. And these are some of the student responses that we gathered during our debrief. This is what they actually said about the exam in real time within about an hour or so of conducting the exam. These comments really link back to the benefits of experiential learning that we saw with Carleton University and what they outlined. And the key things to notice throughout these 6, and really what we're all throughout about 25 or 26 of the student responses, it's the idea of engagement, that these students were actually involved, they were engaged, they really enjoyed what they did. They felt it was a real life experience, and they felt that it was a really good application of their knowledge, again, which is something we want. We want them to feel that what we're learning throughout the 89 days before the exam actually has some relevancy and has some merit. And so when we can show them that what you're learning does translate into the real world, that's a really, really positive thing for me. And the last slide of this section, oh, not yet though. This is just a bit of an overview of what the exam, the final exam planning thing looks like, and the preparation looks like. Part 1, done throughout the term, make sure the students understand what the mock trial is, they understand the logistics. With part 2, we prepare them, and this is a little bit more of the logistics on the teacher end. You prepare not only in class, but you prepare for the exam day. We execute by actually going through and doing the exam. And then finally, the thing that I think some people forget with the last piece is the reflection. We need students to actually reflect on what they're doing, and we need to understand that their voices are heard. And they need to understand that they have the ability to say, this is what is valuable in this. And so the reflection piece is really, really essential in experiential learning so that students can make that strong connection between what I'm learning, what I've done, and why it's important. In terms of curriculum connections, again, this is from the Ministry of Ontario, and this is these are our curriculum documents. It really focuses on the Strand A document, the Strand A expectations, our overall expectations, the skill development, whether it's legal inquiry, political inquiry, historical inquiry, that's really where this is focused on. And these are the transferable skills that we want students to be able to bring to all of their other classes and the students to bring to their next step. So that's really what we're focused on with this. And in Ontario, we have a document called Growing Success that really governs our assessment and evaluation practices. And a question that I had asked a couple times is, well, are you allowed to do this? And Growing Success says yes. The highlighted part is exactly what we look at with this. We just have to have a grade. We just have to have some sort of summative evaluation worth 30% at the end of the course. And if you look to other courses, music in our building, music, drama, French, they all do performative exams. They do oral exams. So there's nothing that says you must do a written exam. All that said is that you must have a summative evaluation that reflects what you've learned in the course. And so what can be done? So here's an example, just some things that I came up with in a number of different courses. In history, you could do a mock trial of a historical person. Zinn Education Group has a really great look at Christopher Columbus and putting him on trial and putting the Spanish Empire on trial. You could do a mixer or a role play, a constitutional convention, Canada or US. The Constitutional Convention for Canada and Rethinking Confederation, those are both big resources available through the Thinking Consortium. And you can order those and you can bring those in class and you can do them over a 1-day period, or you can break it up into, I think, up to 12 or 13 days. So these are all things that are already created for us. The big thing is getting the kids doing something rather than writing it. And now that we're in this period where we're not able to be all together with 25, 30 people in a room, these activities still can be done. Experiential learning is all about doing even in the current times. Just like we're doing today, we can use Zoom or Meet or Microsoft Teams in order to bring large groups of people together in order to do something like this. We're pivoting as well in my law class. Rather than have lawyers come in to the class to work with the students, we're having all of our lawyers come in with video conferencing next quad. And we've actually had a lot more success in bringing people into the classroom virtually because they're not having to go to work, stop work, drive here, do the hour, and then go back. It's much less of a commitment. So we're getting more commitment from our local community. And like I said, the biggest thing is that we encourage our students to be creative and we encourage them to collaborate with each other. With these spaces as well, once we get out of COVID and we're able to go to places, it's not just about going to a courthouse. We could go to a number of different places. If you want to do the mock trial for law, you could go to a university mock trial, moot court. Most of the universities have moot courtrooms. You can go to city halls or town council rooms. They're all set up to really be good for a mock parliament or a congress or a convention, the way the physical space is set up. So be creative with what you want to do and where you want to go. And so there's a whole bunch of different things that you can do. So now we're going to look at some tasks that we can actually do together. And we're going to do a bit of a practice to structure some sort of final exam. So our breakout activity. We're not going to be broken up into 3 groups. I was curious just to see the numbers that we have. And I think we have 25 or so. So I think that's good if we could keep that. We could probably keep that in one group. Sarah, your thoughts?
You want to just do one big group?
I think, what do you think?
Well, we could still break it up. Actually, before you go into your breakout, do you want to answer a few questions?
Yeah, I can't see the chat. So unfortunately, I haven't seen anything. So
Yes.
If you could give me some questions.
Sure. Yes, I would love to. So Charles Jennings from Greenwood College School wanted to get your thoughts on how you evaluate the trials.
So with the trials, I'm looking at, and so what I do is each student does one piece. They ask a question of a witness, or they do an opening or a closing statement. And so I evaluate how well do they know the structure? Are they advancing the case? How well do they know the case materials? Are they bringing in elements of criminal law that we've talked about in class? And so this doesn't necessarily make up a big portion of the 30%, but it does help to create that connection. So you're looking at how well do they relate course materials to and the case documents to what they're actually doing.
Nice. Okay. Nikita Miller was asking the question, could this be co-curricular and assessed for English credit as well? So students have to write, speak, communicate, argue. How amazing would that be for students? Have you ever tried anything like that? Or
we've been trying. Sometimes it's difficult to find the right partner. We had tried to do something like that starting this year, but obviously we weren't able to do that. But you can absolutely adapt it to include a number of different people. You could include it with drama. So if you have a smaller group of kids, you could bring in your drama teacher because they could be the witnesses. The drama students could be the witness, and they could use the skills they develop in their class to do that. And with the writing piece, especially when you're writing an opening statement, that absolutely is a very formative written piece where you're not necessarily riffing off what was done during the case. So it's just it's just up to however creative you want to be and who you want to involve in the process.
Nice. Okay. Okay, so the breakout groups, I think if we split it up into 3, that will still give people a chance to chat and talk.
Okay.
Because then they can unmute themselves and it will be lovely.
Less chaotic,
so,
you're right.
Yes. So should I put the link in for all the breakout groups? Because then they can access the material as well, or no?
Yeah, I think because if you want to send the link for the file itself, because then they can all access the different breakout documents and the Google Docs. So what we'd like you to do, and Sarah's going to share a link to a Google folder. There are a number of different documents there. So there's one for history. So I'll show you what we're looking at. There's one for history where you're going to kind of plan for a Treaty of Versailles simulation. This comes from Markville History Department and the website School History out in the United Kingdom. Group 2, you're going to look at a mock parliament. You are going to be given, this is from Elections Canada, you're going to be given the youth voters bill to lower the voting age, sorry. And then finally, Group 3, you're going to be looking at a mock trial, and this comes from OGEN. What I'd like you to do is complete the graphic organizer that's in your specific Google Doc, whether you're Group 1, 2, or 3. Take a look at the PDF that's also in there and talk about different things. Talk about how you might structure it, what resources you might need, what questions you might have, what roadblocks you think you might come up with. And then we'll come back in 12 or 15 minutes or so.
Perfect.
And then kind of just discuss it as a group. So hopefully we can have someone be designated as the recorder. So one person to kind of record ideas, and then one person as the reporter to report back to the larger group.
Okay, that sounds good. So when I put you in breakout groups, you'll see the breakout group that you're in, and then you'll know which slide or which, I guess, document to open up. Okay, here we go.
And I'll try to visit all the breakout rooms. So if you have any questions or anything like that, please don't hesitate to ask, and I can answer them as best as I can.
Okay.
Jason, Charles here. Can I just ask a quick question before I jump in?
Yeah, absolutely, please.
Yeah, I certainly don't mean to hijack this. First of all, thanks so much for this. This is fantastic. So I'm at Greenwood College. We're a little independent school, and we do mock trials as well. And it's just nice to be able to sort of share resources and sort of hear what other people are doing. So it's nice that you're considering this too. We do an exam and a trial for CLN 4U, and we get witnesses, judges, and lawyers and sort of break it off that way. And I just love, I know you're sort of getting, for people that have never done this before, sort of giving them a kick at the can, but I wonder, is there any way we can sort of share at some point, yeah, just the sort of the rubrics that you're using, or sort of the instruction guides that you're giving? Like we used OGen as well, and that's been really fantastic. But it really is sort of like, as much, it's a lot of teacher sweat in terms of trying to get it all sorted out there. I just love to sort of share my ideas and yours. Maybe that's here, maybe that's somewhere else. I don't want to take over.
Actually, it's funny you say that, because at the end, we're going to have something where we can keep coming back to throughout the year.
Oh,
just
sweet.
a Google Jamboard where you can post questions and we can kind of help collaborate. But yeah, I'm absolutely happy to send you over my evaluative materials for that, because you're right, it is a huge Herculean task getting it set up that first time.
Yeah.
And then when you do it after, it's so much easier. But yeah, I'm absolutely happy to share that, and
Sure.
I can put that up on the Jamboard when we get there.
Oh, that'd be great. I'm happy to do the same. Our biggest thing usually, well, now it's finding court space, obviously, given the circumstances. Getting judges is really tricky too. And we were using the Ontario Superior Court. Actually, had a family connection there, which has since disappeared. He's retired, and it is hard to, if you don't. It sounds like you have one set up, but I'd say for people that's a really big hurdle, is getting, usually kids, families, somebody knows a lawyer, but knowing a judge is a bit different, right? And kind of getting that in. So
yeah, because judges are much fewer and farther in between.
Yeah, if you have any magical tips for that one, I'd always be happy with that. Anyway, I should jump into my breakout room here, but I appreciate all of this. Thanks so much.
Oh, happy to. And we can come back to that after if you want.
Sure, thanks.
Of course. I'm just going to share my screen again. Sorry for the bit of delay here. Okay, can everybody see that consolidation piece?
Yes.
Okay, so I rambled on way too long at the beginning, so this is going to be a little bit shorter and a little bit quicker. If we could focus just on the structure, that first box there. Now, everybody does have access to this, so there was some really great discussion, some really great things written. So I really encourage everybody to go back and kind of look at what the groups did. So can someone from group one just tell me the structure that you're going to do for the Treaty of Versailles simulation in 60 seconds?
Sure, okay, I can speak to that. So what our group is discussing with respect to the Versailles simulation, first of all, considering, where in the year normally this falls, we initially considered, fitting it in as a summative evaluation, but decided, especially also because we're simulating something that has a pretty precise analog in history, that would make more sense to do it as an early session of practice for those sort of debate or or sort of spontaneous contribution skills, and then to be able to build towards something later on in the course where you could do something like a trial for Sir John A. Macdonald, or another sort of more abstract, I suppose, a thing where there's a little bit more room for debate. But this would at the very least allow us to introduce this format where we give them a clear definition of roles in terms of who they're representing, and then they identify what the goal is for the Paris Peace Conference, what they're trying to get out of it, and then the students have to go back, look at their notes from what they've looked at already in the course and what they need to research still in order to understand their perspective, and then to organize it in such a way that they have that opportunity to negotiate with one another, and then afterwards tying it back to that reflection piece, considering perhaps what went similarly or differently to the actual treaty, and then what potential implications that has on what that means for how the conditions of the actual Paris Peace Conference, how that impacted the outcomes. I hope that was 60 seconds.
A little bit, that's fine, but you brought up a good point. Remember, summative doesn't have to be at the end. That 30% that we're building up, you can do that, and you should do that all throughout the year. We just do it at the end because that's easy. That's what we've always done. So you can have that as part of that 30% summative in the first 20 days of your class. There's nothing that says you have to have the summative at the end of the course. So you can build that into your summative assessment piece at the beginning of the course. So, but you're right. So placement is always important. Group 2, the mock parliament.
Hi. Let me just pull up the form, and I'll just because I had it closed. Sorry. So the structure again is building it up over the course of for the civics course, like it's a half semester. Start with elections and get the kids working with first past the post and actually create an actual parliament based on the numbers, potentially, and then have smaller groups come up with bills that they would be interested in, and then work them through a debate there at the end of the semester or at the end of the term.
That's really cool. Thank you. And then group 3, the mock trial.
Well, I'm not sure that if we did it right, so we're probably not very good students.
No, I saw what you guys did. That was awesome. That was really, really cool what you guys did. I liked the way you went with it.
But we talked a little bit about like putting, so this isn't in the context of a law course, I guess, but maybe more in the context of a history or social studies course, putting particular historical figures on trial. We talked about if this were to be a sort of end of course summative project, maybe having students choose the people that they want to put on trial. And also giving students time to like research both the content that they're going to be discussing in the trial, as well as the particular roles that they're going to take on in the trial. And then we talked a little bit about getting some costumes just to spice it up a little bit.
And yeah, so I joined you guys at that point. And so just to tell everybody, we went and bought grad gowns, and that's what we had as our lawyer garb. And so don't be afraid to get creative with that. And so Peter, you guys said you don't think you did it wrong. That's great. That's what you should be doing. I mean, taking some idea and making it creative and making it your own. And when I initially did the presentation, I had it set so that history would do a mock trial of historical figure, but I thought that might be too mock trial heavy. But you guys were talking about creating it from scratch and having the students create it from scratch. So they research the good and the bad of a person. And I think that's brilliant. And so you can make this as big or as small as you want. And it really is important that we tailor it to our students so that you may do the historical mock trial of a person. You may do the same person every year, but you'll never have the same thing. And that's an important piece. So thank you everybody for sharing. So what I want to talk about just before we go to questions, where do we go? There's so much material out there, and I just wanted to direct us what you can look at. The Ministry of Education has a draft experiential learning document out. So if you're curious about what EL is all about, click on it, read through it. It'll help to give you some information. The CCEL 101 document there, it helps to talk to you about what community connected learning is all about. There's pre-learning ideas there as well, and then the reflection cycle that you really, really want to engage with in this. And then finally, if you're curious about who your experiential learning lead is, and you don't know who they are, and your board is like ours, and the organizational chart is Byzantine, and you're going to have no luck with it, just Google whatever your board is, experiential learning, and their page should come up. I did this with our board, Thames Valley, Toronto board, and Peel board, and it came up to the specific page. So the great thing is experiential learning leads sometimes are teachers, sometimes aren't. It's really beneficial when they're not teachers because they're going to bring a really different view into the classroom. And that's something that I've been really lucky with. Getting outside of that rigid education structure and being willing to take chances. So there's that piece. This is what I want to do throughout the rest of the year with us. If you click here when you're sent, when you get access to the slide deck, this is a Jamboard, and this is, you can kind of, it's like the idea of a parking lot with Post-it notes. Post your questions, post your ideas, post your resources here, and come back to it a bunch of different times. And so we can kind of create a little community of people who are going to support each other. So Joshua, like you were saying with the Treaty of Versailles, if you get hung up on something, don't burn yourself out trying to figure it on your own. Come back and we can support each other. And so if you need resources, if you're stuck on something, if you want to do something, this also can help to bring collaboration together for all of us. And so that might be something that we want to revisit, not just in this 1 hour session, but as we go through the rest of the year. And it's going to be important to make sure that we support one another and we keep in touch if we wanted to do things like this. So I don't have access to the chat. I don't think. No, I can't see the chat. So if there are any questions that were put in, Sarah?
There were no questions. If anybody wants to unmute themselves and ask a question, that'd be great. There was just a few comments about, great point about the summative throughout the year. Costumes are a great idea.
And what we've had some teachers on our board do is they also work with maybe an art class, and they get the art class to create evidence pieces. And so you can bring in a whole bunch of different departments into something like this. And this isn't just a secondary thing. If you wanted to, if you were an elementary teacher or you wanted to work with an elementary teacher, because they're doing all the subjects, that's something that really would work well at the elementary level as well. So if you guys have any questions right now, I'm happy to chat, to answer them.
So a question I have, so I teach psychology right now at the moment, and this is my first time teaching the course period. So my question is, what kind of experiential assessments could I incorporate as opposed to like a final exam?
Well, you could always have the kids do the Philadelphia experiment and have some of them be the prisoners and some be the jail guards. No, I'm kidding. That went horribly wrong. That was terrible idea. I'm sorry that I mentioned that. So again, it's getting in touch with your experiential lead, because they may have an idea that's there. They also may be able to connect you with another teacher. With something like that, you could have the kids prep to run an experiment, because that's what some psychologists do. So have them create the idea of, this is my theory, this is my thesis. How would I actually test it? How would I set up this test? And if it's something that actually would be a viable test, you could actually have them go through and do it. Or you could just have them discuss it and present it. But again, the act of doing doesn't always have to be the full execution of it, but it can be the prep of doing. So I know it's not a great response. I'm not a SAP person necessarily. But again, I think that would be where your experiential learning lead would come in really, really handy, because they might be able to connect you with more experienced teachers who know more about the course and who would be able to really do something strong like that.
Okay, thank you for offering those suggestions.
Sorry, I don't have more.
Okay. Are there any other questions at all? Oh.
Okay, well, again, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. I hope that it was a valuable hour. If you guys have any other questions that either you think of later, don't hesitate to email me. I'm always happy to chat. I'm always happy to get new ideas. And you can follow our class at SDCI Law. We try to post as much as possible about what we're doing in the class. We use a lot of resources that are Ontario-based, Canada-based, and in the international course, we use a lot of stuff from the US and from the EU. So it could help to give you some ideas about different resources, and don't be afraid to share. That's what we're here for.
Well, on behalf of OHASTA, I just want to thank Jason for sharing his expertise and resources with us. And also, everyone should have been emailed just looking for some feedback on the conference. So if you have time later on today to fill it in for us, it helps us, grow and develop and figure out how to better support educators. So thank you very much, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of the conference, and be sure to stay in touch. Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone.